Most of Beetlejuice's quirks come from all the various forms he changes into in order to fit his area of mischief. Sure, the 600-year-old demon has become quite the popular culture icon around the world, and almost every American has dressed up as a Beetlejuice character at least once in their life, but we would not have half as fun as we do when this eccentric ghoul does his clownish bit by changing into different personas. Both in the 1988 film and the newly released sequel, we see how Beetlejuice is the master of transformation, effortlessly shifting into different forms by showing off his wild abilities. For a long time across different media, Beetlejuice has used his absurd range of powers to mock, deceive, and even kill anyone who dares to cross him. As an undead freelance bio-exorcist, he is one of the most powerful entities in the story. While Beetlejuice's long list of abilities makes him truly stand out, for me, one of his most funny tricks is seeing him change his body into all kinds of shapes and forms whenever he wants. In both Beetlejuice and Beetlejuice, the demon constantly changes its appearance, shifting from different humanoid shapes to monstrous forms, which makes him a dangerously adaptable character. While some of you might have missed out one or two bits, I surely did not. So without wasting another moment, let's discuss every form Beetlejuice has taken in both the films. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you, and let's begin. The Bio-Exorcist form. As you know, when Beetlejuice ended up in the afterlife, he took on a new permanent form as an undead being. This is his main look and has been recreated across other versions like animated shows, video games, and stage productions. In this form, Beetlejuice still looks somewhat human, but with a grimy, decaying appearance. Along with his transformation, he gained a ton of powers that he uses in his role as a freelance bio-exorcist. These include everything from teleportation and reality warping to duplication and shape-shifting. His ability to transform is what lets him take on so many different forms, often resembling a twisted and monstrous version of Bugs Bunny. In the early versions of the 1988 script, Beetlejuice was meant to take on many different forms, with his true appearance being that of a winged demon. The now iconic filthy pale man in the black and white striped suit was originally supposed to be just one of the random forms he would use. Plus, instead of sitting in a waiting room at the end of Beetlejuice, he was actually supposed to be destroyed at one point at another stage in the story. He was even imagined as a smaller, possibly Middle Eastern businessman. Apparently, the original script was much darker, aiming for a hard R rating, with a heavier focus on death and despair in a black comedy style. All of that was overruled for the iconic version of the bio-exorcist we have grown to love as of today. Before he went into business for himself, Beetlejuice was actually Juno's assistant and helped her handle cases in the afterlife. Now, nobody in the living hell knows what a bio-exorcist is, but I think it is a fancy term used by Beetlejuice to further his service of helping the dead get rid of the living. Throughout both the films, Beetlejuice can easily change both his appearance and voice whenever he wants, which he shows when he mimics Lydia as part of his scheme to trick her into marrying him. In this form, he seems practically immortal, shaking off damage in both Beetlejuice and Beetlejuice 2 before always returning to his usual self. While other spirits appear throughout the movies, none of them seem to have the same reality-bending abilities as Beetlejuice, hinting that something unique may have given him these powers. However, the true origins of his abilities remains a mystery in both the films, and somehow, the endless possibilities is the best part of it. Many people believe that it is possible that his job as a bio-exorcist could be the source of his limitless powers. Cowboy Beetlejuice. So after the tragic death of the Maitlands in the first 1988 Beetlejuice film, they both turn into ghosts, who find themselves incapable of scaring away the Dietz family, who have recently moved into their Winter River house. While Charles and Delia Dietz cannot see Barbara and Adam trying to haunt them, Lydia sees the ghosts in her attic from outside a house while her stepmother was redecorating it. When the real estate agent Jane delivers the master key of the house to Lydia, she decides to go up to the locked attic and meet the Maitland ghosts hiding in there. As she turns the key and proceeds to unlock the door, Barbara and Adam rush to hold the door from inside. This is when the TV in the attic magically turns on and a bizarre ad plays on the screen. The first shot closes in on what looks like the model graveyard made by Adam, and when we see Beetlejuice sitting atop a plastic cow while wearing a cowboy costume and rolling a lasso in the air. As the background lights up with a sign of his name, he tries to get through to the Maitlands about their dire situation of having their space violated by the living. The ad introduces him as the afterlife's leading bio-exorcist, who is ready to do anything to help his customers get rid of pesky living critters. The peak clown moment comes when Beetlejuice gets down from the cow figurine and rolls his butt on the fake grass while claiming that he would even possess himself to get the job done. And if the Maitlands act immediately after the ad ends, they get a free demon possession with exorcism. He then dances on a ranchy tune and insists that they call for him, and that third time's the charm. As he jumps about in his cowboy form, Beetlejuice mentions some questionable things about swallowing or eating anything, and if they come on down, he would chew the dog. Right after the commercial ended, Adam and Barbara were left scratching their heads about how the bio-exorcist was desperate to get hired to rid their house of the Dietzes, but never left any address or phone number in his flyers or business cards. Scary Beetlejuice. After repeatedly failing to scare away the Dietz family from their home, Adam and Barbara Maitland resort to seek help from Beetlejuice even after Juno had strongly warned them against it. Once Barbara calls out his name 3 times, the couple is magically transported into the Winter River model, where they meet the lewd bio-exorcist after digging his coffin out of a cardboard grave. When Adam and Barbara are not convinced about Beetlejuice's qualifications, he begins boasting an impressive resume. Apparently, Beetlejuice went to Juilliard, graduated from Harvard Business School, and traveled the world. He also lived through the Black Plague and thoroughly enjoyed it. Weirdly enough, he has watched The Exorcist about 167 times, with it getting funnier every time, and given that he is a dead guy. Some of these supposed qualifications, like attending Juilliard or Harvard, are actual real-life accomplishments, but these lines were improvised during filming. Of course, Beetlejuice was exaggerating or outright lying for comedic effect when he boasted about his past to the Maitlands. Anyways, Adam and Barbara wanted nothing to do with his false claims and straight up asked if the bio-exorcist was good at scaring people. Beetlejuice simply grins at their questions and scares the shit out of the Maitlands by popping gross tentacles out of his face. Soon, both Adam and Barbara decide that involving Beetlejuice is a bad idea. The bio-exorcist almost starts forcing them to hire him. When they still refuse to strike a deal with him, Beetlejuice's head literally starts spinning on his neck, further scaring away the newly departed couple, who scream home thrice and run away from the crazy demon. Beetle Snake. One of Beetlejuice's more terrifying transformations in the first film happens after Adam and Barbara fail to spook the Dietzes and their guests. While they do pull off a pretty decent haunting, nobody at the dinner table is scared and instead gets very excited at the thought of being haunted by literal ghosts. In fact, Lydia's father and stepmother start to draw plans of turning their house into an amusement park where the real ghosts live, or a supernatural research center. After having enough of their drama, Adam and Barbara unleashes Beetlejuice into the mortal world. He literally turns into a giant snake to go after the Dietz family. While the snake still has Beetlejuice's recognizable features, this form is much scarier than his usual undead look or his other versions. Plus, even if he had the tail and body of a rattlesnake, the head of the snake looked a lot like Beetlejuice's own face. Anyways, after scaring the living shit out of Delia, Beetle Snake pushes Otto down the stairs and drags Charles by his foot, only to drop him on his head. When he closes in on Lydia and tries to hurt her, Barbara intervenes by saying his name out 3 times, which sends him back inside the model. Now, as a snake, Beetlejuice is also more dangerous, as he directly attacks Charles and Delia in an attempt to frighten them away. This scene really shows just how mortifying this demon can be as compared to other spirits. While Beetlejuice's crude jokes and perverse humor make him a darkly funny character, his snake transformation makes him a truly dangerous ghost, who has possibly even racked up a body count by the end of the film. This snake form is also one of the earliest examples of Tim Burton's use of stop-motion animation, long before he worked on The Nightmare Before Christmas or directed Corpse Bride. The snake scene in Beetlejuice showcased Burton's talent for bringing this unique animation style into the spotlight. In fact, the snake may be the most distinctly Tim Burton-esque version of Beetlejuice in the whole movie. Beetlejuice in his porcupine form. So after Barbara sent Beetlejuice back into the model, the demon started wreaking havoc and crashed a red car against a lamppost. Meanwhile, the Maitlands were really beating themselves up about how irresponsible they were about allowing Beetlejuice to haunt the Dietzes, as he could have seriously injured somebody. This is when the undead ghoul chimes in, all ablaze, calling Adam and Barbara a sack of losers for interrupting his work. When they call him out for his unnerving violence, Beetlejuice simply says he was doing his job as they had a deal, although now he does not want to continue his business with them and intends to turn his focus towards Lydia because apparently she is the only one who seems to understand him. This really irks Barbara, who has now grown very fond of Lydia, so she picks him off the model and warns him to leave the child alone. In retaliation, Beetlejuice grows fang-shaped sharp metal spikes on his body to pierce into Barbara's hand, which prompts her to drop him back into the Winter River model. Hilariously enough, the porcupine-like spikes on Beetlejuice's body get stuck on the fake grass of the model, and he struggles to get back up. After managing to get back up, the ghoul talks about how anxious he feels because it has been over 600 years. He then wonders where a fine guy like him can go looking for some action, and just then, the inferno room in the model lights up. Beetlejuice fixes his hair in the most clownish hair and dances his spiky body over for some action from the girls in the brothel. Apparently, Juno had put a brothel full of girls inside the model to keep Beetlejuice busy in more interesting affairs. Now, there are two reasons why Beetlejuice grew out these porcupine-like spines from his body. When a porcupine feels threatened, they usually defend themselves by raising out their spikes. Similarly, when Barbara picked Beetlejuice up from the model, he felt a bit threatened and spiked out his body to prick her hand. The more obvious reason in the end could be that he was horny from his first meeting with Lydia and wanted to get some action. As problematic as it sounds, it is no news that Beetlejuice is a crude man without any morals and is known for being somewhat of a womanizer. So maybe when he shined his spikes and raised his hair into horns, it just means he wanted to get some. The carnival form of Beetlejuice. One of Beetlejuice's most memorable transformations in the original Beetlejuice film is his big top carnival form. Lydia summons him in a desperate attempt to save the Maitlands from being exorcised by her stepmother's very arrogant interior designer, Otto, who had stumbled upon the handbook for the deceased and stolen it from the Maitlands. Unfortunately, instead of forcing Adam and Barbara to appear in front of them as living proof of ghosts, Otto read an incantation that began turning them into dust. So after Lydia agreed to marry the ghoul, Beetlejuice shows up in a circus-themed form to distract the Dietz family's dinner party. With a carousel top hat going around, bat wing-shaped ears, and inflatable arms, he creates a chaotic spectacle to re-enter the mortal world. To show the living a good time, he welcomes them to the Museum of Natural Greed by switching on his top hat carousel that had scorpions, snakes, and other critters hanging from it instead of horses. He then rolls out his arms and inflates them into gigantic mallets, making out a full-blown carnival out of himself. But what makes his transformation even more shocking is how deadly it turns out to be, as Beetlejuice's clownish appearance ultimately leads to the deaths of Maxie and Sarah, the couple who were supposed to fund the supernatural amusement park that Charles and Delia had big plans about. While causing chaos, Beetlejuice sets up his carnival-style high striker game behind Maxie and Sarah, and after transforming his arms into oversized mallets, he sends them flying through the building by striking the platforms beneath them. This carnival form is one of Beetlejuice's most iconic transformations, with full of the dark comic visuals that feel right at home in Tim Burton's world, as it perfectly captures Burton's signature style, blending the bizarre with humor, and feels especially well-suited to the iconic antiques of Beetlejuice. The haunting version of Beetlejuice. One of the more unsettling moments in Beetlejuice 2 is how Beetlejuice's presence blurs the line between reality and imagination, creating a traumatic haunting for Lydia right from the very beginning. Early in the film, it is revealed that she occasionally sees Beetlejuice and in fact saw him when she was in the middle of shooting an episode of her talk show. She even takes pills to stop seeing his face every now and then. While some of these encounters are written off as hallucinations, others, most especially her dreams near the end, seem to be directly caused by him, even though he was banished by her and literally exploded into bits. Lydia saw the most haunting dream of Astrid giving birth to a baby Beetlejuice after marrying a man she met during their trip to Dracula's castle. When she woke up from the nightmare only to hear Beetlejuice's voice, Lydia began to panic, but luckily it was another nightmare from which she woke up alone. This suggests Beetlejuice may be using psychological torment to haunt Lydia long after their initial encounter, because if you remember when we first see Beetlejuice in the sequel, he was sitting on his desk concentrating on Lydia's photo. When Bob interrupts him, Beetlejuice talks about how long-distance relationships can be difficult, especially when one person is dead and the other is ignoring him for 30 years straight. Still, he focuses on having a definite psychic connection with Lydia, which really adds on to the dark ambiguousness to the film's ending, as it could overrule her hallucinations given that Beetlejuice was actually haunting her. It is a subtle but sinister twist that shows just how malicious the ghoulish bio-exorcist can be even with his over-the-top antiques. But there is a real question about which of Lydia's visions are just trauma-induced hallucinations and which ones are actually Beetlejuice haunting her as a reality-bending ghost. By the film's final moments, it is hard to tell the difference, and even though he seems to be destroyed, it might only be a temporary victory. Whether or not he is truly gone, the ending of Beetlejuice implies that Beetlejuice will continue to haunt Lydia, lingering in her mind as a lasting trauma, even if he is no longer present in her dreams or real life. The scared version of Beetlejuice. When Beetlejuice gets a call from upstairs, he asks Bob to hold down the fort and goes into the waiting room. After being summoned into room 515, Beetlejuice meets Wolf Jackson, an actor who is now the head of the Afterlife crime units. After boasting about his acting life for quite some time, Wolf mentions that Beetlejuice's name came up in a case he was investigating and then shows him a photo of Dolores. Now, we've seen Beetlejuice scaring people many times, but this was the first time that just the sight of a photo pretty much scares his eyes out of his skull. He begins to stutter in fear and lies about never coming across the woman in the photo before in his life or afterlife. But when Jackson takes him to the crime scene, he tells Beetlejuice that Dolores was out for revenge and the ghoul was at the top of her hit list. Jackson advises him to lay low as she has been literally sucking the soul out of the dead while looking for him. Later, we hear Beetlejuice telling Bob that his ex-wife was back from the dead and she is one scary broad, for hell hath no fury than a woman scorned. The human version of Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice introduces a new side of the demon by revealing his human form through a black and white flashback from centuries ago. One of the film's storylines focuses on Beetlejuice's connection to his ex-wife, Dolores, who finally manages to restore herself after being scattered in pieces for centuries. This leads Beetlejuice to share his backstory with his shrunken-headed employees, giving us a glimpse of who he was when he was alive and how he met his end before being stuck in the afterlife. Back in the 14th century, during the Black Plague, Beetlejuice was a greedy Italian grave robber, struggling to survive in a grim and desperate era, which could refer to the pandemics and epidemics that hit Italy between the 1300s and 1600s. Now, the two met on a cold, starless night while Beetlejuice was robbing the grave of a plague victim. Dolores showed up dressed in a black gown, with a corset and a beautifully detailed plague doctor's mask. Even though Beetlejuice was a tough guy at heart, they instantly fell in love and quickly got married. And at their wedding, they performed some pretty bizarre rituals, which included drinking each other's blood, biting the heads off chickens, and sacrificing a goat, which Beetlejuice jokes was all very traditional. What he did not know was that Dolores was secretly part of a soul-sucking death cult and had very interesting plans in store for him. After the wedding, Dolores and Beetlejuice headed to the bedroom for a passionate night. You know how newly married couples are, they had sex and then shared a drink, but Dolores had secretly spiked Beetlejuice's drink with poison as she was planning to kill him. According to her death cult, she needed to take his life and steal his soul to gain immortality. Whether that was true or just some twisted cult myth is unclear, but in the world of Beetlejuice, we know that the concept of immortality does not seem too far-fetched. Either way, she never got the chance to find out because when Beetlejuice realized what Dolores had done, he snapped and killed her by hacking her into tiny little pieces with an axe. That is why she appears dismembered when we first see her in Beetlejuice, and after her death, somehow her body parts ended up stored in boxes in the lost and found department of the Netherworld. Now, the human version of Beetlejuice is pretty similar to the ghost we know, just without his supernatural powers. But even in life, he had that same sleazy, dark personality as seen in his disastrous wedding night and his gruesome dismemberment of Dolores. Michael Keaton plays him with the same familiar touch of twisted humor, but this time with more human weaknesses and desires. While he did not have the vast powers he would later gain in the afterlife, it is clear that Beetlejuice was always selfish and self-absorbed, driven by his own immediate wants without having an ounce of concern for anyone else. Beetlejuice in his couple's counselor form. In Beetlejuice 2, Beetlejuice finally gets another shot at pursuing Lydia Dietz, decades after their first encounter. When she gets a notification of Beetlejuice posters on her phone, Lydia goes into super panic mode and finally tells her annoying fiancé Rory about Beetlejuice, But this guy is an idiot, and just for the heck of it, he says Beetlejuice's name out loud 3 times so as to make Lydia face her fears. Of course, it transports them into the model and they find themselves standing outside a therapist's office only to drop directly inside an office with Beetlejuice sitting across the table, dressed as a therapist. This allows the bio-exorcist to unleash a barrage of horrors on them, terrifying Rory by literally spilling his guts out in his so-called safe space and then forcing Lydia to give an unnaturally fast birth to a baby Beetlejuice in mere seconds. But Lydia somehow manages to regain control of the entire situation by saying home, 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 which returns her and Rory to the real world. This recurring appearance of the demon is supposedly there to help Lydia with her relationship with Rory, but this therapist guise is more than just a funny costume change, as it plays a key role in highlighting Lydia's growth and struggles in the story. Even after more than 30 years since the events of the first movie, it is clear that Lydia is still deeply affected by her experiences with Beetlejuice, showing how much he continues to haunt her. Early in the film, Lydia is shown struggling with her trauma, relying on prescription medication to cope, but Rory is secretly undermining her efforts. Beetlejuice's choice to disguise himself as a therapist acts as another layer of meaning into his antiques. While it allows for his usual twisted humor, it also feels more personal and biting, given their history and his lingering feelings for her. Although this therapist persona is a comical turn, it fits seamlessly into the story, keeping the tensions between Beetlejuice and Lydia more intimate and emotionally charged. The baby form of Beetlejuice. One of the more outlandish creations in the new sequel is the baby version of Beetlejuice. During one of Lydia's therapy sessions with Beetlejuice and Rory, Beetlejuice makes her suddenly pregnant with a demonic baby that looks a lot like him. While it seems like a separate being, it is likely just another wild manifestation of his powers. The little creature is a hyperactive monster able to crawl up walls and attack people, as it literally bites on Lydia's leg. This baby Beetlejuice even reappears in the film's final moments as part of a closing nightmare for Lydia, adding one last unsettling twist to the story. In a dream where Lydia envisions her daughter Astrid getting married, she's shocked when the birth of her grandchild turns out to be none other than the return of baby Beetlejuice. The tiny creature quickly kills the doctors but disappears as soon as Lydia wakes up. This baby Beetlejuice makes for a strange and effective scare, piling on another disturbing trick into Beetlejuice's arsenal. It also hints at the possibility of a future storyline involving a spawn of the bio-exorcist, opening the door for the series to continue with a new version of Beetlejuice, potentially without Michael Keaton in the role. Although I do not think anyone can ever do justice to the iconic mantle of Beetlejuice other than Keaton himself. So that was all the forms of Beetlejuice we've seen in both the films. I think the carnival form and baby form of Beetlejuice will always be my favorite version of the bio-exorcist. But I really hope we get to see Keaton come back as Beetlejuice in a threequel for one last time. With that being said, what are your favorite forms of Beetlejuice from this list? Let us know in the comment box below. As always, if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.